Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire. This is Larry Stevens, and Larry is from Crew, and I've known Larry for a few years. I knew his wife before I knew him. Larry is quite an adventurous guy. If you're seeing him on video, when you hear him on audio, Larry's unassuming. There's a lot more going on. You're always kind of quiet or, very calm demeanor. Mm-hmm. But there's a fire burning inside, isn't there, Larry?
Mm-hmm. There is. Mm-hmm.
There is. You could not do the things that you do if there wasn't a fire in there. Mm-hmm. And I've got a feeling you're a competitor. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am.
Yeah. Did you play any sports growing up?
Yeah, I played soccer, football, racquetball.
All aggressive sports.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like those too.
Yeah, I hate to lose, but I love to play.
And I think that's a theme I'm finding with guys that are doing the type of caliber work. And let me tell you, you're the top of the heap here. I don't have anyone there that I've interviewed that's handling 1,400 universities. You don't talk about that. Mm-hmm. I know you just assumed I didn't, but I did. I want people to understand what's happening here. So Larry, Youth Worker Nation, is a guy that you want to listen to because some of you are going to relate with him, and that's what this is all about. All of us are going to relate with somebody or somebodies. And so Larry, catch us up a little bit. Tell us some things that you're doing now.
Well, of course, I work with Crew, and we're one of the largest missionary college ministries in the world, over 1,600 chapters in the U.S. alone. So really our mission is to reach every student on campus. And my role in partnerships and in innovation is to how do we accelerate that mission? How do we do that? And how do we understand, the culture's changing and it constantly changes, but the gospel is always the same. How do we make the gospel, how do we make that relevant to students today? So right now, one of my projects, Doug, is we're working on virtual reality. We were approached by some guys from GoPro who happened to be part of Crew at Florida when they were students, and they came to us saying, this was about a year and a half ago, before everything now is VR. If you go to the big mobile conference in Spain, it's everything, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, everything was VR. And so we got a head start because of these one of the senior developers at GoPro came to us and he told us, he said, we get Crew, we get what you're about and that you're missional. How can we use VR to reach students? And so we've been playing with that. And so this past summer, we took our VR cameras to 31 countries. We filmed Rome, Colosseum. We filmed a rope course in Northern Ireland. We took our camera to all these places where our student missions were, Japan and Africa, so that we could give students kind of an immersive experience of what it's like to go overseas to do mission work. So that's one of the projects. The other is for vision casting, but what if we were to do this on campus? What if we gave away these Google Cardboards to students, and that would lead them to know Jesus in a different way? And so that's our next project we're working on.
I love cameras and video cameras and all these different things. And you got that next edge. And I'm so glad to hear that about the VR cameras. Mm-hmm. And I heard about them first through you. I don't know why I'd missed some of that. I mean, we know. Yeah, I was used to watching the 360 screens from Disney and different places like that. But these VR cameras, they're coming in cubes, a lot of them, right? Mm-hmm. Some that I saw, and I don't know what form or shape yours are in, or if there's multiple cameras, or if it's one cube, they're almost affordable for the average person now. They're expensive, or they're on the edge of expensive. There was a time, I'm sure, that they were not even affordable.
Yeah. Yes. You've got some that are 60,000. Facebook Surround and Google Jump is, we're talking lots of money, but then you do have the affordable ones, which Samsung just came out with one, the 360 camera, and then Kodak came out with one. So you're looking, you could buy one probably for about $400 to $600.
Now, this is important for Youth Worker Nation because we're talking to teachers and coaches, but we're talking to youth pastors, we're talking to crew, we're talking to your volunteers. In fact, I talked to my sister, and one of the girls that she raised for a while in her home is one of your staffers up in NC State or UNC and UNC State, something like that. I can't remember right now. So people like her, we're going to make sure that she hears this.
Yeah.
These things students are into, that they're working with, that they're used to, like VR, virtual reality, then it's important for these guys to know. So are the lesser expensive cameras, are they good?
They are. Yep, they are indeed. I don't want to get too technical, but you have a mono and you have stereo type of footage. And the stereo is more 3D filming to where you feel the depthness of it. And so that's where everyone's heading, the industry, and where we want to move into. But as it relates to students, is that students today, the millennials, or the monikers now they call students, is that the difference between the students today than before is they really want not just to see a movie, to see something, but they really want to be in it. And that's a big shift. And they want to participate, and that's the next thing. And so VR allows you to have an immersive experience to where we could not just talk about human trafficking or talk about this earthquake in Nepal, but we could actually take you there to make you feel like you are there when you put on a headset and see a 3D video of 360 surround of what's happening in Nepal with, look at the suffering. You can see poverty in a new way. And Bill Gates, actually, he does an inside blog. In his recent blog, he took his VR camera with him, the same one that we have. He never thought you could do it, but he feels like VR can really take you to where he's at.
First of all, who influenced you in your life? Middle school, high school, college, what name comes up?
Well, in high school, the one person that really influenced me the most was Rodney Boyer. He was a high school woodshop instructor.
Tell me about him, and why did he influence you?
He just had a Christian spirit about him. He loved his students. Really nice guy. You knew he cared about you, but one thing that was unique about Rodney is that every spring break, he would take a group of his students on a snow ski trip in a RV. And so I had the privilege of going with him on one of those trips. But he lived out his Christian life, but then on these trips, he would take you aside and ask you more about your life, ask you more about the deeper questions about, are you a Christian? Do you know what that means? And so he did that with me and the other kids on that ski trip.
And so that was a pivotal point for you.
It was, because I don't think I ever had a high school teacher, ever take me aside and ask me questions about my life, about my thoughts on God. He was really the only one.
This is a public school?
Public school.
Yeah, and so what would you say to public school teachers? They're in a lot of scrutiny, if teachers and principals, and I interviewed a couple of principals and assistant superintendent, and one thing I asked them is, faith-based is very difficult for you guys to have to deal with, but how do you deal with it? And if you were to have those people come on your campus, what would you say would help you, and what should they stay away from that would hurt you? And a lot of these guys, they want you there, but it's not their call. And so we had some great conversations about that, and most people love faith-based people to be there, but they, especially if they have something to offer. So what would you tell teachers that are in this difficult world or in public school? They feel called to be there. Amanda and I, your wife, just we keep saying that word called. Some people that are going to listen to this, I hope listen to this, that are not of faith at all, or they're wondering about faith, whether it's in Jesus Christ or they're confused or wondering. What does that mean? What does it mean to be called? And then what would you say to those teachers in public school and principals?
Our team recently watched a great video on YouTube on the amazing teacher. It's about a physics professor who, and I would go there first. It's a great video. It's a great it's a very inspiring story of a physics teacher who cared about his kids, and he shares about his life. And I think he was probably one of the best teachers in the country, and that's why they did a video of him. During the school year, he takes time to kind of share about his family. And I think in the context of that, you can talk about your faith. So I would go there first.
How do they get to that film?
I'll just go to YouTube, My Amazing Teacher.
My Amazing Teacher.
Mm-hmm. He's a physics professor.
What's his, in a college, in a university?
In a high school.
A high school?
Yeah,
okay.
A public high school.
Okay.
So I would go there first, but for college, which is my primary focus, it's a lot easier. UCLA did a study on spirituality, and there are two things that they found. One was that students really want to talk about spiritual things. The second thing is the teachers, the professors, really want to share their worldview more with their students. And so I think that you will see more of that on the college campus. I think teachers may struggle with that in high school, but I would have them watch God's Not Dead 2, the movie. I think it's a great movie, and it's basically a high school teacher is put on trial for mentioning Christianity. I think it's a great movie to watch, but I think you have to. You do have to know when you can share and maybe when it's not appropriate to talk about your faith.
Yeah, should you be, and I hear what you're saying, but I want you to say it to those teachers. Should they be militant or should they be what?
They should be caring. They should be caring. A lot of times teachers know, they can just tell, they see these students every day, and they can tell if there's something going on in that student. You can tell if they're going through a hard time. And in this video, if you watch it, you'll see this relationship that with the physics teacher has with his students, that they've girls have come to him saying that they've had an abortion. They've come to him saying that they're not living with their mom and dad, they're homeless. And so a lot of times your first line of defense is your school teacher. And so there's a great opportunity to do ministry even outside the classroom.
I talked to a principal at first interview, Tracy Clark, and he said, I said, how many students do you deal with at this school? He says, 1,300. I said, so you've got 1,300 students you have to organize and make things good for and educate well, and you have 1,300 different problems with 1,300 different families, which starts expanding how far-reaching, and they see them more than many parents see their students at that point in their life if they're in public school.
That's true. You're right.
Where did you go to college?
Well, I'm from Texas, born in California, but I grew up in Canyon, Texas, but I went to college at University of North Texas, north of Dallas.
North Texas State. Now
it's university.
Well, let me tell you, and it was famous when I was in college as one of the greatest music schools, jazz schools.
That's right, yep.
Yeah,
yep.
Still is probably.
Yep, it is, yeah.
Yeah, incredible place. In fact, I used to pass it, I think, if it was on the highway going from Oklahoma City to Dallas. I made that trip quite a bit. Tell me about how you ended up with Crew, though. How did that happen?
Well, that happened, I was part of Crew in college, and that's where I grew in my faith.
As a volunteer or?
As a student.
Okay.
And so when I was in college, I was part of Crew. And they invested in me. I was discipled by someone there, and I learned how to share my faith for the first time and learned how to do ministry. And then when I graduated, I worked in for a software company in Dallas, and I volunteered for 2 years with Cru, leading Bible studies back on campus with students. And I kind of realized that I overheard a youth worker sharing why he does what he does. And he basically said that he didn't want to give his leftovers to ministry, and he wanted to give his best years to serve the Lord. And those two things really struck me because one is I felt like I was giving my leftovers to these students, and that I would come home late at night. I was tired, and I would lead a Bible study, but I didn't feel like I was really making an impact. And at the same time, I thought my best years are now, and why not go into full-time ministry on campus to really kind of really grow in my skills of ministry, of how to disciple younger guys, and really in how to share my faith more effectively. So that's kind of how it started for me.
So what year did you enter in as full-time?
I entered full-time in 1997.
Okay. All right. First campus?
My first assignment was Cornell, upstate New York.
Wow. Quite an assignment.
Yeah, but it was great. They have a huge need for staff up in the Northeast. In the South, you've got a lot of churches. You've got a lot of there's a lot of Christian things in the South, but up in the Northeast, there's not a lot, and there's more need. It was a fun challenge. I worked with athletes. I worked with international students. I worked with intellectuals. I worked with professors. I led a coach's Bible study. I did a lot of things, but I also learned a lot of things about ministry, and the Lord, He did a lot in my life, I felt like, to get me ready for what I'm doing now.
First of all, where do people go see your VRs? Where do they go see the videos that you did virtual reality with Nepal, those places? Did they go to YouTube?
Yes, they're on YouTube, but we're still in the middle of putting the final video together. So
there's one big video that you're going to compile all these to. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. Because we want students we want to expose them to Ireland, Africa, Japan, and so we're putting together a 2.5-minute video, which we don't have a link up yet. We're still working on that final video.
2.5 minutes, which is smart. I mean, commercials are short, and that's pretty long for a commercial. But how many, possibly hundreds of hours of footage are you going through? Somebody.
We're going through at least 400 hours of video
to get 2.5 minutes. And for you guys that aren't used to media, welcome to media. That's about what it takes to get the right stuff.
Right, and the duration is really important because you don't want to lose your audience, your student. You want them to get excited. You want to tell the story. You don't want to lose them as well.
Tell me the upside of this generation, and compare it to when you started, where we are now. Give us some insight into who they are, and how to engage with them.
One of the upsides is that I think for Christian students, college students, they have a more eagerness to tell people about their faith. And so that's really been exciting, is that to see students open up and talk about their faith to their friends. The other thing is for students in general is that they really want to be part of something bigger than themselves. You see across the board, YWAM, Cru, InterVarsity, they're doing a lot of things that are cause related. They want to be part of something that connects to their cause, whether it's human trafficking or caring for the poor, caring for the orphans. And that's been neat, is for us to connect them, students, to those causes. And the reality is that God has a heart for the poor. He has a heart for the orphans. And it's just another level of connecting students to God, to God's heart.
Tell Youth Worker Nation about Bill Bright. A lot of these people that are going to be listening to this probably don't know where Cru came from, who Bill Bright was, why this name is significant, and but you knew him, and give us a little insight.
Well, Dr. Bill Bright started Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ, in 1951 on a campus at UCLA, and it started at the Kappa Sig House. And it was really, there wasn't a whole lot happening as far as college ministry, but it was also the mission of reaching students on that campus, and the idea that your students are your future leaders, your college students. And if you can reach the students, you can reach the world, and you can influence the world leaders. So, and that's what we do even today. When we like this last summer, we took over 3,000 college students on global summer mission adventures, and those students most of their time will be spent on other campuses, engaging with other students on those campuses. In most cases, university students in other countries will be the next leaders of those countries.
And you've worked with a lot of different students, a lot of different projects. Give me your worst ministry moment.
Well, it's funny because one of my worst is I feel like is also one of my favorite moments, because one of our partners is I Am Second. It's a media website of video faith stories of celebrities, musicians, athletes. And so we were doing an I Am Second outreach on the campus of Texas Tech. And so what happened was there was a movement happening already with I Am Second on college campuses, LSU, Texas A&M, Baylor. And so what happened was the campus leader of I Am Second sent out a Facebook post, said, "Hey, come join me for this I Am Second event, kind of launching at Texas Tech." Well, like over 100 students showed up from other campuses, and they contacted the other Cru students at Texas Tech. "Hey, can we crash with you?" And so the students at Texas Tech felt like, what are all these students here doing on our campus? And they felt like they were hosting a kind of a retreat for all these students. And they contacted me and said, "This is a disaster." The Texas Tech staff, they thought it was horrible what was happening, and so we had to do some damage control. But the reality is that it was very insightful, because when the difference between a movement, I think, and an institution is that a movement can be defined as kind of chaos, in that what was happening was you had 100 students from all these campuses come on their own. They drove to another campus by themselves to be part of launching I Am Second, and that was completely random. It wasn't structured, planned, and I think it was insightful for me to see the difference between kind of an organization and a true movement, which we haven't seen in a while. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. It does, because we can all relate with chaos somewhere along the way. It doesn't, whether we're believers or whether we're not believers, whether it's public school or whether it is private institutions or universities or trips with students or mission trips. Chaos is part of it, and you've got to be able to handle chaos and flow with it in some cases. Right.
Yeah, so I could share more other disappointments. We just came back from a million student rally in Washington D.C. this summer, and I mean, the dream was for 1 million. I think we had almost 300,000 students at the National Mall in D.C. But one of the disappointments was we had spent a lot of time developing this app as a way to engage students after the event, and we didn't see a lot of those who attended our event kind of go engage with the app. And so, I think it just surfaces our need to learn more about digital engagement with the students today and how to really connect to them and help train students mobily and digitally.
Yeah, and some people would think that's just a waste of time, waste of money. Do you ever run into that with run into roadblocks on finances because people go, you don't need that. I don't want to put my money there. Well,
that's true all the time.
So what do you do about that? I mean, how do you handle that emotionally? Mm-hmm. Because that's what we deal with that on any level that you're trying to do something, and it can be a small community, small college, small anything, or large. And tell me what kind of emotions happen, discouragement, when you're faced with people rejecting.
One of the biggest things we fight with isn't the rejection of. It's more of that our students and our leaders on campus, they don't have a bigger vision of what God can do on their campus. So I think it really comes down to vision of really reaching the whole campus. And in fact, one of our biggest challenges, I started our speakers forum, speakers traveling around the country on campuses around the U.S. And we have this one speaker, he's an illusionist, and he will fill an auditorium of 1,000, 2,000 to where you have overflow of 400. So you have to book an overflow room of 400. And one of the biggest challenges is when a campus will say, well, we've booked a room of 200. And we have to tell them that's too small. That, and really their view of God is too small of what God can do on their campus. And it comes down to, and so it comes down to vision and how big is your God?
It does come down to that with all of us. Tell us about fundraising, though. What would you suggest to people that have to raise a lot of money, mm-hmm. and either for the first time, because you deal with that all the time, mm-hmm. or for the 100th time, and it is that their faith has been stretched. There's this massive amount of money that's got to be collected. So on both those levels, and anything in between, let's talk about fundraising. Fundraising is probably the number one obstacles for many of us in many things. So give us your feedback there.
Sure. So Cru, all of our missionaries, all of their support is through fundraising, through finding ministry partners to help them to do what they do on campus and in missions. But the same applies for FCA, for all the other really Christian campus ministries, InterVarsity, Navigators. I think the one lesson for me on fundraising is that no matter what you do, you cannot do it by yourself, and that it really it forces you to realize you have to depend on God and on others, and depend on a team to help you do that. And the great thing about inviting others to join you is that they may not be able to go overseas or be able to be on a college campus like a business person, but they have a heart for college students. And so they want to be part of what you're doing. And so if by not asking them, you're preventing them from being part of ministry. So
that is the big thing, that fear of rejection, or fear that, or we're superimposing in our minds what we think someone else is going to think or say.
Right. And it comes down to courageous faith, courageous living. And I think that's what we need most today in our staff leaders and our volunteers, is that we need more of your courageous faith. to go through rejection, and that there will be rejection. But to believe that God, if God called you into ministry, into go and talking to others about Him, He will lead you to people who are already wanting to know. But to get to them, you have to get to others who don't want to know anything. And you never know. You may say something to a student, and they may blow you off. But yet that one comment, that one thought that you see that you left to them may bloom 10 years later.
Has to stew in some people.
They may have to stew.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. Amanda and I talked about some of the comments and things that have gone back and forth. Mm-hmm. And the one thing they would tell us when I went with the campus life, and that was, you may not hear for 5 years what you started today. And sure enough, 5 years, I got a phone call.
Yeah,
from this kid. Yeah, and he said it was because of.
There's a story about this man who was a missionary overseas, and he spent 20 years overseas doing ministry, and he only saw one true convert, and he left dejected. Really, came back to the U.S., just felt like he wasted his whole 20 years. But that one convert, his name was Rabbi Zacharias. And I'm actually friends with that missionary's son. His name is Robert Wagamoth, who lives in Orlando. And he's one of the great literary agents in our country. And I've heard Rabbi Zacharias share that story. And I think what you just said, Doug, is true, is that you never know. The gospel never returns void. And I think that's our responsibility as ambassadors for the gospel, ambassadors for God, is that God wants us to go and tell them about Jesus and the gospel. It's the results are not up to us; they're up to God.
Let's talk about your wife,
Amanda. Yes.
How'd you guys meet?
Oh, we met at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met at work, and she is an incredible writer, communications major, and she's ghostwrited for executives for Crew. Wow. And so we met. I don't want to get too sad, or too down, but my dad had died in a plane crash, and Amanda, she was a great friend, good friend, and we just hung out once a week, just spending. She was just there for me as a good friend, and what turned out to be once a week became twice a week. Became 3 times a week, and that's kind of how it happened. She tells me that I kind of came through the back door. Yeah. But I think the great relationships are the ones that start off with in friendship first.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So, yeah, and that's a good note for students that will listen to this and in college and people in ministry, because ministry can be lonely. How old were you when you got married? This is significant. Tell me how old you were.
Well, I was in my 30s. Mm-hmm. I think I might have been 35. Mm-hmm.
And now you have 4 children.
4 kids, yeah.
That's right. It's never too late.
Yeah.
I was 30. My friend Tim was 33, who was FCA, and you were 35, and people have probably all given up on us.
Yeah. She has a great heart for... when I met her, she was discipling other girls, sorority girls, at UCF. And, Amanda, one thing about her is that she doesn't drink coffee. And I drink coffee every day. So I was so surprised to see her one morning at Starbucks. I thought, oh, wow, she's picked up coffee now. And, but she was with 2 girls. And I walked past her and I saw that on a piece of napkin, she was sharing the gospel with another girl. And what happened was one of the girls was living with another guy, and that guy, I guess, went to the health clinic, and the nurse said that he may have AIDS, and it really freaked out the sorority girl, and they said, you have to talk to Amanda. And so that was that appointment that Amanda had at that Starbucks that morning. And Amanda, I loved her courageous, in speaking to this girl, saying, the first thing you need to know is that God loves you, and she began to talk about just the gospel and walk her through that. And so that is the heart of Amanda that I married, and she still continues to really minister to other women.
Yeah, she does that. She always will. And you the same with who you are, what you do. Any last comments to Youth Worker Nation?
Watch that YouTube video, and then one video that I watch once a year to help inspire me and to get me in the right mindset is to watch Karate Kid. Is that there's so many great principles of mentorship, of discipleship, that it's not just Bible study with your students as a youth worker, but it's just a way of life. Is that you're inviting younger men and women just to be part of your life. And then as you do that, there are moments of teaching. But I think that's probably the best. I've always thought about writing a book on the Mr. Miyagi style discipleship. It's a great movie, but it's also a great. There's so many great examples of discipleship in that movie.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.